Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the White Coat Club. My name is Nicole, and I'm a counselor at Moon Prep. Today, I have Muskan with me, and we're going to be talking all about waitlist, deferrings, what to do, and what not to do. Don't forget to like and subscribe to get more BSMD, med school, and admissions advice from us. Awesome. So we're sitting here, early to mid-January. This is around the time that students are going to start gaining acceptances, receiving denials, and possibly becoming waitlisted or deferred. So, Muskan, do you want to start off and just kind of talk about what does it mean to be waitlisted versus deferred?
Yeah, sure. So I think there's a lot of confusion, especially when you're talking about early decision, early action, the different deadlines, and then all the different types of decisions that you can get. So I think it's really important to dive into, first of all, what does it mean to be deferred? So if you applied early action or early decision and you have received a decision of deferred, essentially what that means is that they haven't made a decision on your application quite yet, but they will be considering it in the upcoming months when they consider all of the regular decision applicants. So if you, it generally just means that they weren't able to accept or deny you at this point, but they still want to consider you for admission to their school. Now, come April or come March or April, when schools are starting to release their final decisions during their regular decision rounds, you might also receive a decision of waitlisted. So what waitlisted means is kind of the same thing in the sense that they couldn't make a decision on your application, but they are keeping you in a special reservoir of students that they are still going to consider if spots open up. So by the time these decisions come out, they have already filled their class up with students that they've accepted, but because students receive multiple acceptances to multiple schools, a lot of times there are open spots left over, and that's when they start to pull from the wait list. It's really important to note that different schools also have different percentages of students admitted off the wait list. More competitive schools tend to have lower percentages of students who are going to be pulled off just because they have lower percentages of students denying their acceptance or going to a different school. But that changes every year. So it's really important to listen to this podcast and take the steps that we're going to recommend to ensure the best possible chances of getting off of the wait list. Another thing to note is that waitlist movement often happens in batches throughout the summer. So every month or every 2 weeks or so, they'll meet to see what their incoming class is looking like, how many people have accepted their offers, and they'll start to decide what they want to do with the students on the wait list. And a lot of schools either have a ranking process or they have a process where they look at what are the gaps in the student body, and that's how they start to determine which students are removed off of the wait list. It's kind of a mysterious process. It's difficult to know what each school wants and what they're looking for, so it's really not that necessary to dive deep into how students are selected off of the wait list, but we will be getting into what you can do to maximize your chances of getting off the wait list.
Awesome. So I guess now I'll dive into kind of what the next steps would be. So like Muskan said, some of these lists you can get pulled off of them over the summer. So, it's really important to kind of weigh your options in the moment and see where's the school for you. Did you get other acceptances in, other denials in, kind of looking at your list and seeing what is going on there, assessing all of those other options and figuring out, is this school still a top contender for you, or is it one that you're, still wanting to kind of move forward with? If it is still one that you want to move forward with, there's some things that you're going to want to start to pull together as you start to move in with the next steps. So things that are going to be important are pulling that mid-year transcript, requesting it from a counselor, This will typically be available to you in January once your first 2 quarters or first semester is over and you have those types of grades. You're also going to want to go and reflect, take some notes on anything that changes or any updates that you have since your application was submitted. We're looking for things like any leadership changes. Were you elected, president or vice president of that club that you thought you might have? Is there any other experiences that have been added to your activity sheet? Any awards that you've received? Any other additional life circumstances that you think are noteworthy? And start to kind of pull these together. We're not going to do anything with them just yet. We'll get into that in the next step of what the actual process is. But we're going to just start to gather these things, take note of these things, and then be ready to use them when the time is right. Now we're going to get into the actual process. So, Muskan, do you want to explain some of what the process would actually look like once those items are gathered?
Yeah, sure. So a lot of students might have heard of a letter of intent or of continued interest. Oftentimes it's abbreviated as a LOCI or LOCI. What this is essentially you are telling the school that you're still committed to attending, and you want to give them solid, concrete reasons for why you would be a good fit for them to remove off of the wait list. Now, it can be really confusing on how to start this process because, once again, there's not that much information online. And the first step is deciding whether or not you need to take the initiative to write this letter of continued interest or if the school has a formal process. Now, each school's pretty different, so it's important to do your research. And with schools that have a formal process, it's going to be pretty clear to you that they have a specific type of letter of continued interest that they want, or if they want you to submit like an extra essay, because it will be noted in your decision letter. So once you learn that you've been waitlisted in your portal, they will have specific instructions for what to do when you're waitlisted. And one tip that we have, even if it is a formal process, is to talk to your alum interviewer if you feel comfortable for tips and tricks on how to format this letter or how to format your answer to the additional essay. This does have a caveat though. Just make sure that the alum interviewer that you had good rapport with and you felt comfortable asking questions, just because you don't want to ask someone that you think might not give you a good answer. And absolutely do not ask them for favors or ask them to get you admitted. Alum interviewers oftentimes do not have as big of a role as you might think. They're there for the school to learn more about you, but they will not be able to provide any favors for you. So that's kind of how to go about the letter of continued interest process if it is kind of an outlined or formal process. But Nicole, do you want to talk a little bit more about what to do if you have to take the initiative yourself?
Yeah, so if there's nothing presented to you about a specific step and you want to go ahead and take the initiative, we recommend emailing the regional counselor that you have. Every student's going to have an admissions counselor that's probably been emailing them potentially, or you can definitely look it up on their website to see who your regional or state counselor is. And that's who you're going to want to email with your LOCI, and just informing them that you are definitely continuing interest at their school.
Yeah, awesome. And just one thing to note is that you should absolutely also continue to pursue your other options and not wait at this time. I know that getting waitlisted can feel really devastating, especially if it was one of your top schools, but you absolutely should also look into all of the other options that you have, all of the other decisions that you've received, acceptances that you've received, because at the end of the day, it is really unpredictable whether or not you'll get off the wait list, and you don't want to mentally commit yourself to attending a school that you're waitlisted at, and you do need to move forward with other options. This is also a requirement because of National Decision Day. So Nicole, do you want to explain a little bit about what to do
Yeah.
on National Decision Day if you're waitlisted?
Absolutely. And I think this gets a little bit confusing for students, also at this time in January and in the coming months, wherever you're accepted to, you're going to be getting tons of emails about submit your deposit, secure your seat. They really want to know who's coming, right? They accept all these students and they have a certain amount of seats available, and they really want to know who's coming because that also impacts those schools' wait lists and deferred lists and all these things. So, if you're really, really wanting a school that you were waitlisted or deferred from and you submit that LOCI and you're kind of doing the process, you still need to, participate in National Decision Day. So you do still need to deposit somewhere just to secure a seat. Some schools might not, like we said, remove you from that deferral list until after May 1st, because that's when they're finding out who's accepting the seats they actually admitted. So it's kind of like this little game of back and forth. But you must deposit somewhere. Typically the deposits are a couple $100. You'll lose that if you do end up getting into the school that you are deferred from or waitlisted from. But definitely make sure you submit something by May 1st. You do not need to submit earlier than May 1st. The schools will email you dozens of times and they'll say, submit to your deposit, secure your seat. That's just them wanting to know before May 1st what their numbers are starting to look like, what their yield is looking like, all that. So, you don't have to do it before then, but definitely don't just bank on hearing from that other school and don't say, oh, I'll just wait to decide. Definitely have a backup plan, submit to your backup school. And that's gonna be crucial to not forget. So that's super important. There's also definitely some things to do and not to do. So things not to do while you're waiting. I know you can be super anxious. I know it's a stressful time. We said earlier, reach out to your counselor with your LOCI letter, but we do not want to be calling or emailing frequently. I've worked at a university before. I've worked in a school counseling office before. I know this is something that comes up a lot where they want to ask questions or they want to call. If you have legitimate reasons, legitimate questions, you want to see if they received your FAFSA, then you want to see if they received, a transcript or something, a test score, if it should be accessible in the portal. And if you don't see it, these are legitimate reasons to call, but we're not going to continue to call or email these staff. The other thing is follow their process. You don't want to have additional references reach out on your behalf if the school is not asking you to do so. So the school will have their process. If they want additional letters, that's perfect. If they're not asking you for them, do not, take it upon yourself to have people write letters and send them in for you. I've worked with students before who always say, what about someone else that I shadowed under? What about a councilman that I did some work with, or he knows me from this X, Y, and Z? Like, we're not going to try to, win their attention with additional letters. They have their process. They want the specific things that they're asking for. And then that's going to be it. You have the opportunity in your letter to, explain to them if there's any changes or if there's any leadership things noteworthy, like we said, but we're not going to have additional references reach out also. What else is like a good thing to not do?
Yeah, those are some really good points. Another thing that I would want to add is don't ask about your chances or percent chance, I guess, of you being accepted into the school, either in a call or email, or even in like your, letter of continued interest, because quite frankly, most of the admissions committees have no idea, especially if you're asking them this in April before National Decision Day or early May. They have not yet done the analysis of what their class is going to look like and how many people they have to take off of the wait list, and they won't be able to give you an answer. And quite frankly, you won't be leaving a good impression if you continuously ask them for your chances of getting admitted. They won't be able to provide that to you, so it's best to just stay away from that topic. Another thing is, do not beg for entry in your letter of continued interest, or once again by calling or emailing. you trying to show genuine interest in the school will do a much, much better job of ensuring you can get off of the wait list than trying to beg for entry. In your letter of continued interest, write about why your goals and missions align with the school, why you would love to do the major that is offered at the school, what clubs and activities you're interested in. You really want to think of concrete examples of why that school is the perfect fit for you. Begging for entry will not be able to have the same level of impact as you being able to discuss why that school is so meaningful to you. Also, this is something that, everyone's guilty of. I've been guilty of it in the past, but please do not let information online, especially misinformation or rumors, try to sway your perspectives. I know that sometimes, someone might write, oh, like they really want to see this, like they want you to call them 10 times. That's definitely not true. This is one of the reasons that we are hosting this talk, is to give you kind of all of the good practices to use in the case that you're waitlisted, but especially all the online forums and whatever chats that they might have for these schools. A lot of times there's a lot of misinformation being spread on there and exaggerations of what is the truth. There's also rumors oftentimes about yield protection, or if they're saving seats for specific groups. It's best to not listen to any of that. Just do what you can do, what's in your control, and stick to that, because listening to these rumors and exaggerations won't do you any good except for cause unnecessary stress. So the best practice is to just do what's in your control, which is to write a really solid letter of continued interest that talks about your genuine interest in the school.
Yeah, and definitely stay off of Reddit. Like you were saying, there's so much misinformation online and you don't know what's true. You don't know what other people are just saying to, sabotage, or they have misinformation. And I think it can kind of cause people to spiral. But there's absolutely some things that you should be doing. So I guess we can go into those, this is what you should be focusing on. This should be your takeaway from the podcast today.
Yep. One thing that we've said probably at least 5 times by now is to follow the specific instructions for the school. So if you receive your waitlist letter, your deferral letter, and they give you specific steps to follow, you absolutely need to be following them. You won't earn any bonus points by deciding to do things your own way. If anything, you're going to leave a bad impression, so make sure that you follow the specific instructions that the school provides you. And another thing to do, which I know can be hard, especially when you're anxious and waiting for a result, is to stay as calm as possible. At the end of the day, you have received acceptances from other schools, and it's important to start planning to, put down a deposit and attend a school come fall time. And it's also important to start getting excited to attend the school that you end up committing to. There's so many things to look forward to in the summer, getting a roommate, picking out which dorm you're going to live in, registering for classes, maybe picking your major, planning life in college, and getting excited for orientation. So don't let the stress of an impending waitlist decision kind of take away from that experience. At the end of the day, whichever college you go to, you'll find your community, you'll be really happy there. And it's really important that all of the planning steps that you have to do in the summer between your senior year and the fall of your freshman year of college are done, because if you stress out and you wait, you're going to have to do all of these checklist items in August or September, right before college starts, and it's going to just continue to cause undue stress. So stay calm and start to plan out your life at a different school, and hopefully things go your way. But at the end of the day, we and Prep are sure that you have really bright futures ahead of you.
Yeah. So another thing is discuss these decisions in depth with family, friends, neighbors, coworkers, cousins, people that you look up to. It's a huge decision, which is great, but having these conversations I know can sometimes be daunting with parents, but talk to other people, talk to your college counselor, your school counselor, weigh your options, make sure every stone is, turned just to see, make sure you're, making the right choice or the choice that you feel most comfortable with. It's an amazing feeling to have a ton of options. It's great. It means you're a stellar student. But chat with people about it just in order to kind of feel comfortable and, get their perspectives on what you ultimately end up doing. And yeah, stay calm. I definitely stay calm. Don't panic. You'll have a lot of great options and then just, go through the motions. But that's kind of all I have for tonight. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think we covered it. But the biggest takeaway is, once again, just stay calm. You're gonna have some great options.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, and we'll talk to you next time.